Okay, we're going to get started in just a couple of moments. Again, hi, I'm Lisa Whips from TrinCon Group in Columbus, Ohio, and thank you for joining us on our webinar on improving productivity and profitability. Our speaker will be Duff Swain, president of TrinCon. I want to give us just a couple more moments. I have a couple of people that are still trying to sign on. We will begin. Okay, I have the go-ahead. So let's begin. Welcome again to today's presentation on improving productivity and profitability. Your speaker and presenter will be Duff Swain, president of TrinCon Group.
Well, good morning and welcome to our program. I hope you walk away with some good ideas and some thoughts and suggestions on how you can improve your business. As Lisa said, there are ways for you to ask questions. I want you to do that. You can either raise your hand, by clicking on the symbol, or you can send a chat, or there will be time at the end of the program where you will open the mics up and you can ask questions freely. So with that in mind, okay, just a very brief introduction about TrinCon if you're new to our programs, so you know who we are and what we do. We are a technology and an advisory company in Columbus, Ohio. We specialize in the trucking industry, and we've been doing that since 1982. Okay. Early on in our career, we started, and for I would say at least 25 years, principally we were an advisory company. But in the process of that, in 1983, we developed an activity-based costing system for trucking because we found out that truckers simply don't understand their cost. Not able to answer the question, like, for example, what's the difference between a trip with an owner-operator truck and a company truck, or what's the difference between a 500-mile trip that takes a day and a day and a half? And to this day, most trucking companies surely cannot answer that question. So we use this as an analysis tool in our advisory practice for all those years because we're able to take a company's numbers apart, put them back together, and determine exactly where they were making money and where they weren't, and most importantly, why. So in 2011, it evolved into a very powerful web-based software called True Costing. It's essentially very powerful search engine, and this is not by any means a promo for True Costing. However, if this is the basis of what we do, everything that we get involved in one way or another, there's a cost analysis involved. We have extensive experience in this particular area. I think we probably understand over-the-road truckload and truckload costing in general better than probably just about anybody in the industry. And with 30-some years plus of experience of helping companies become more profitable, cases get out of serious trouble, we have a lot of experience and we have a reputation. So I'm just trying to point out to you that we've got some things to say here that are valid, based on our experience, and we're going to pass those observations off on to you. Okay. If you are interested in seeing a demo of True Costing after the webinar, we'll have a quick 10-minute demo. But on with the program. So why are we here? Okay. Well, basically, we're here to make motor carriers become more profitable. That's our sole reason for existence, and that's the purpose behind this program. Our agenda today, we're going to look at the ability to reduce deadhead and its impact on productivity and profit, increasing miles per day per operating truck, increasing driver-to-truck ratio to increase profit, slip seating, potential changes to operations organization, and driver and operations productivity incentives, okay? And we're going to try and sum these up. We have what we call a mock-up trucking company that we've built. We'll show that to you, and we're going to apply these to a trucking operation and let you see what the impact can be on the bottom line. This is a program that's basically designed for C-level management. It's not put together, with your dispatchers in mind or your administrative people. this is put together so people who are running the company and have responsibility for profit, have some good ideas. So now you have a better feel for who we are. We need to have a feel for who you are. So you have the ability to respond to these polls. Lisa will open the poll, and you can vote, and we'll get an idea of who's in the group. Okay, so essentially we have about 2/3 dry and refrigerated, and we've got about a third of our is either in flatbed or in heavy haul. That's good. Okay, let's go on to the next question then. What's your fleet size? For the most part, we've got a small carrier group, under 100 trucks. That's good. That's a good audience. Okay, it's cool. Let's see what type of a fleet you operate. Are you company-owned trucks only? Are you contractors only? Or are you a combination of both? Okay, so most of you are a combination of both, and the rest are company trucks. There's no owner-operator fleets involved. That's very helpful. It gives us a good idea who we're talking to. Okay, so all right, let's deal with some reality here. We've seen reports about all these things, and they're true. The industry in the last few years is now consolidating and constricting. What that means is the bigger getting bigger and fewer. The medium-sized carriers are becoming more specialized so that they don't have to compete with the big guys on the same terms. And the small carriers need to have a niche, need to have a reason for existence where they're able to do something that other people simply can't do, or they're going to have a serious problem. And the people who can't do that are either going to fold their tent and quit, or are going to be absorbed by another carrier, or they're going to fail. I mean, that's the cold, hard reality of the dynamic forces that are going on in the industry. And that fire is being fanned by the driver shortage, hours of service rules. The government continues, to clamp down on safety and driver productivity, and electronic logs are a reality. And face it, technology will continue to change the structure of the industry. We have to learn how to use technology to our advantage and quit trying to resist it or adopt it to the way we do things. We have to adapt our operations to the technology that we purchase. And if you're not doing that, you've got a serious problem, okay? So, in the meantime, the industry continues to experience low profits and return on investment. And, if you're not making, at least over 6% net before tax profit, you're not getting theoretically a 10% ROI on your equipment in a typical over-the-road situation. And you simply cannot continue to do that forever. Sooner or later, you're going to exhaust your ability to raise operating capital or have the operating capital you need to run it, and it's going to come down around your head. So we've got to become far more conscious of our balance sheets, our costs, how we make a profit, and what kind of customers we need in order to do that. So this is you simply have to change your mindset. Less than 6% is not the norm. It should not be the norm for our industry. However, in the past many years, it has been. Okay, technology. We need to adapt. We need to adapt to the technology we purchase, and not have them adapt to the way we do things. Drivers really don't have to have their own truck. You own the trucks if you're company trucks, and if drivers understand their role and the importance of their role in the company making a profit, having a secure future, and it's explained to them, they'll realize, they cannot let that truck sit just because they're on vacation or time off. Someone else needs to be operating that truck, okay? Driver turnover, high driver turnover can't be part of the business. I mean, credible study years ago by the University of Illinois determined that an over-the-road driver, based on circumstances, that job is probably at optimum of about 35% annualized turnover. And I can tell you, we have clients, TrendCon clients, are in that category. So driver turnover does not have to be 100% like it's averaging now with the large carriers, or in the 80 percentile with the small carriers. You can't live that way forever in this industry. Not with a driver shortage, and not with a need to have your trucks operating, and you can't afford to have 5% of your fleet sitting against the fence because you don't have drivers. You can't do it. Shippers will not listen to changes. That's a fallacy. Our industry has for a long time has not been good at strategic sales and selling to the decision maker. When you're trying to sell change to a shipper in order to increase your productivity, you don't do it at the working level. It's got to be done from the top. Change happens at the top down. And the people who are running these companies more and more realize they have a vested interest in the health of their motor carriers and the safety of their motor carriers and the well-being of the drivers. So that's changing. So we have to change our mindset of how we sell things. We can't slip seat our trucks. Well, that's hooey. You can't. And in most cases, all of you have situations where it is possible. It may take, changing your mindset in operations. It may changing the mindset of your drivers so they realize you must operate that truck. It typically is not a problem with customers, especially when they're able to benefit from the increased productivity. They understand these things, and we have to learn to work that way. So we have to change that mindset if we're going to go move forward. That's all there is to it. They're what's known as dynamic forces. So I have to ask you, is your profit perspective right? Okay, at the ownership and top management level, typically we find that's true. But what we find is here you are, a capital-intensive business, and you've got people in middle management making decisions every day about how your trucks are utilized and how they're staffed with drivers. And they are not profit conscious. They are service conscious, and they are customer conscious, and maybe driver conscious, but they do not understand how the company makes money or what's necessary to do that. And it's important for you in your business to make them understand and start measuring and getting into setting goals and having things like KPIs. We call vital signs. If you're not measuring these things every day, revenue per day per truck for the total fleet, how many operating trucks do you have operating each day? What is the revenue per day for those operating trucks? Is your fuel surcharge compensatory? And how many qualified drivers do you have in the pipeline should one leave? You need to know this information daily. And probably the most important ones are these two. And you're going to hear me talk about this on an ongoing basis. Your key KPIs boil down to revenue per day per truck, per operating truck, less fuel surcharge, and the number of operating trucks that you have. That's what drives your revenue. That's what drives this business. And all too often, all we're measuring is revenue per mile, okay, total miles, total revenue. What it boils down to, measure the end result. It's revenue per day per operating truck. How many trucks you got operating that day? And that's the more trucks you have operating, you can the more effective your revenue per day is. But you cannot sacrifice revenue per day per truck. Your sales, your operating staff must understand profitability. And I can tell you from experience, the large majority of you, they don't. Now, qualifier there. There's exceptions, and I'm speaking in general terms based on what we see. But at the same time, there are more and more companies out there that are learning about their costs, learning how to market and sell professionally, and especially the guys at the top. They've learned this, they get it, okay, and that's what you're competing against going forward in the future. Above all, you have to understand your cost. Keep racking my brain for the last 33 years saying to myself, how does the business run? How can you run a business without understanding your cost, okay? And that's huge. And it's getting back to, again, understanding the cost behind revenue per truck per day and the number of trucks operating. You need a costing system to do that, okay? And again, this is not a commercial, but we're going to just give you a few pictures and use our system to demonstrate these ideas so you can see the importance of it, okay? So what does a costing system measure, okay? It measures the profitability of your pricing. It measures the profitability of a customer or a trip or a truck. And it measures the profit impact of increased productivity. Huge. So just a really quick lesson in activity-based costing as a concept, okay? Your cost and your profit are affected by variable expenses and fixed expenses. Duh, okay, everyone knows that, right? So your variable expenses, the way we define those is when you move a truck, you create a variable expense. So truck depreciation is not a variable expense, and we see many carriers who are carrying that as a variable expense. It's at least a semi-fixed expense, but at the time you're looking and operating for a day or a week or a month, and that truck is, if you're paying for that truck, it's a fixed expense. So if you move the truck, you wear out parts and tires, but if you don't move the truck, you still have a mechanic to pay. So there are fixed and semi-fixed expenses, okay? And you're talking about maintenance and SG&A. So what we do in activity-based costing is we organize those, and first of all, we start off with revenue, and we tie that to the operating stats in the system. So it's not everything is coming from your trial balance and your operating stats, okay? And then we separate the variable expenses based on actuals as much as we possibly can, and that gives us a variable cost per mile. And then we organize the fixed expenses how your business is organized, okay? And it could be remote terminals with remote domicile, or it could be a single domicile. So all of those are organized in some way, spread in a fashion that fits how you operate your business, and then you wind up being able to measure burden rate per day based on operating trucks and or the total fleet. You need to look at both, but on a daily basis is operating trucks. The next step is that you separate these, and we separate them into, like in this case, company trucks and contractor trucks, and we separate the operating stats. The revenue is split out, and now we also are able to measure the variable cost per mile, and you start to see that your cost centers are different. And what's a cost center? It means the footprint of that is, the cost is different. In this case, it's ownership. It could be over-the-road trucks versus local trucks, okay? Could be drayage, versus local. Anything, or dedicated, anything that makes the cost footprint of that truck different, okay? Then we wind up separating the allocated fixed expenses, and we wind up with a burden rate per day. So when you apply that to a trip, okay, and let's say you've got this trip, you've got a variable cost of 89 cents a mile, and you've got a burden rate for each operating truck of $168 a day, okay? So you have a trip, and let's say it takes you, 44 hours to accomplish that trip. So you've got revenue of $12.30, you got variable cost of $916.70, and you have fixed cost of $308 because that's the burden rate times this in days, okay? It's less than 2 days. So your total cost, $124.70, you're just barely a profit, okay? Now, let's say that trip takes 48 hours, and all of a sudden we see there's a loss because the burden rate went up because it took more time. And if it took 52 hours, it's a loss at big time, and the only thing that's really changed here is time. So you can't just measure everything by mile. It has to show the impact of time, okay? So let's start applying these tools so we can start looking at a few things like what is the impact on deadhead? Now this really is the big deadhead, and the other biggie is inadequate fuel surcharge. These are huge, okay? Most of us don't fully understand. And look at what the causes are, okay? Very simple. Bad dispatch decisions. No customers in backhaul lanes. and poor quality loads and brokers. And right now, we're all bleeding from that right now because of the low availability of backhaul freight. I mean, I have clients out there getting rates, in the 80-cent range per mile on backhaul. I mean, just like, it's a throwback to 20 years ago. So not having customers in your backhaul lanes and having too many lanes can be a huge factor in this, okay? So when you look at it, we can't be load conscious. We've got to be profit conscious. So let's look at this a little more closely. Reduce deadhead in this example. Here we've got a trip, that you can complete in a day. And in this particular trip, there's 85 miles deadhead, or 16.7%. And what that boils down to is a variable cost of $453, fixed $168, operating profit, 4.5%. Okay, well, at least there's a profit. It's not where it should be, but there's a profit. Now let's just look at what would happen if we could reduce that deadhead by 25 miles, down to 12.4%. The difference is huge. Your variable costs drop drastically. You go to a $51 profit, or 7.8%. I mean, that's over a 3% swing. It's huge, absolutely huge. So you cut your deadhead by 4%, and you'll increase your bottom line at least 3%, if not more, okay? So, ask yourself, how about inadequate fuel surcharge? Symptoms, here are the symptoms. Very simple. You're using the customer's percentage rate. You're using the customer's fuel pay. The customer is asking you to roll the fuel surcharges into the rates. Those are all techniques that work to the customer's advantage in the long haul. And until this is treated as a commodity, a true pass-through situation, and you don't have that understanding with your customer, you're at a disadvantage. Especially if you're rolling the rates or the fuel surcharge into your rates, because then your operating people don't understand the difference. The people who are making decisions about how your trucks operate every day, when they don't separate that, they don't have a clear understanding of what is the true revenue to the truck. So let's look at an example. Here we have short trip, okay? And on the outbound trip, we actually are paid a fuel surcharge, and at this particular time it was 28%. It's not anywhere close to that now, but it was there, okay? And there was deadhead, and they came back for $250, including fuel surcharge, okay? Theoretically, a 4.5% profit, okay? Previous example, all right? Now, the fact that there was no fuel surcharge in that backhaul rate, you've got to apply the fuel surcharge. And when you do, and it turns out to be you're backing out the 28%, you really only have $180 on that backhaul rate. So now your true revenue is only $580, and all of a sudden it's a 7% loss. I mean, that's an 11.5% swing to the bottom line. And it's all the cause and effect is a backhaul situation where our people in operations don't understand the importance of separating fuel surcharge to understand the rate, and don't insist on getting paid fuel surcharge. And if your customer is not going to listen to that, then you've got the wrong kind of customer. Let me tell you, okay? I mean, that's not something you can live with. That's something you have to change in the future. It may take a while. It may mean you got to go get some customers in those backhaul lanes, or find brokers and 3PLs that understand the difference. They're out there, and they will work with you in that sense. Okay, so you don't want that kind of a situation. If you want to impact your bottom line faster than anything else, make sure that your fuel surcharges are compensatory, okay? What's the impact of slip seating? Well, let's stop right there. Let's have another little poll here, okay? How many of you, on a regular basis, on a planned basis now, actually, slip seat trucks? Okay, please answer that. Well, this is becoming the norm. About 25 to 30% of you actually do? If I'd asked this question 5 years ago, everyone in the audience would be saying, "Oh, you can't do that. Yeah, drivers won't go along with that. You know, they want someone else to drive. Customers don't go along with that." And that's all a bunch of hooey. You're accepting that someone else controls the ownership of your truck, and you're accepting that customers are stupid. You know, increased productivity drives down costs. And in this time of hours of service and electronic logs, we have to learn how to do this legally, and you can no longer afford to think in terms of a one driver, one truck mentality. Let me ask you, when was the last time you got off an airplane because the pilot ran out of hours and had to take his plane home? Or a river barge, or a steamship, or a train, or a trolley, or a bus, or a taxi cab. We're the only segment of the industry that's grown up with a one driver, one truck mentality. And you can't go forward with it. The dynamics of that will drive you can depreciate a truck over 3 years. Fastest depreciation item, in the tax code. And you can get you can buy a warranty for 750,000 miles. What that tells you is your most cost-effective part of using that capital asset is to operate that truck maintenance-free effectively for 3 years, fully depreciated. And you can't do that with one truck, one driver. And if you don't learn how to do that, other people do. They're going to make more money than you are, and they're going to have an adequate return on their investment, and you're not, and sooner or later it's going to kill you. So, take it for what's worth. Doesn't mean you have to slip seat your whole damn fleet. If you just slip seat 10% of it, it'll have a major impact. So let's just look at a couple examples here, okay? Slip seating is first place is logical. Hours of service, say if you manage it right, you're managing your driver on a clean 5-day week, okay? And part-time drivers or floaters can expand your operations to 6 or 7 days. And especially if you have a floater and a driver goes on vacation, it just makes sense. I mean, lay it out, do the work on the logs, and it's going to come back and tell you that a 5-day week is the way this thing is designed. Okay, so looking at some examples. Here we've got scheduled time off. Truck driver. Let's say we have 7 to 8% of our trucks typically sitting outside parked because of scheduled time off. Vacations, sick, whatever, request a day. All these things have to do. So it makes sense to have 11 drivers for 10 trucks. And one of them is a floater, always driving someone else's truck. What's the impact of that? An empty truck, it's an expensive thing. If you look at it, if as a result of that, you have 6 or 7 trucks that sit all year because of scheduled time off, and your revenue is $180,000 for that truck, excluding fuel surcharge, and you have a 35% gross margin. That's typical of dry freight. Maybe it wouldn't be bulk. It would be higher even. That's a $63,000 loss in gross margin that would otherwise go to the bottom line because your truck is sitting there and you continue to pay for it and the expense to keep it. So it's huge. So that's an easy way to phase into some form of slip seating is to have a floater who drives the truck of the guy who's not working. Now, let's look at some trip possibilities. And the most logical, the simplest thing is in a short haul environment. This is difficult to do in an over-the-road environment because it requires remote domicile and lane saturation. But if you've got any part of your operation that's operating in a 200 to 250 mile radius, then this kind of scenario is logical because here's a trip where you can accomplish again in 11.8 hours. And there's a revenue, it's only $600, variable cost of $450, same trip. It comes down to a 4.7% profit. Now, let's say we slip seat that truck, second shift. So the revenue doubles, the variable cost doubles, but the fixed cost, in theory, remains the same because it was all absorbed on the first shift. Consequently, this bottom line, this is a mix of the gross margin from that second shift with the net margin of the first shift, and it's huge. It's absolutely huge. Now, if you're doing that on a regular basis, you're going to wind up changing the depreciation of the truck from an operating expense, probably from 5 years to 3 years. And if you were to do that, your depreciation would increase to $194. Okay, and your operating profit would be $190, and that's still 13.5% more than you need to make on a single truck in a day to be healthy. Room in there to share with your customer in order to give them the incentive to cooperate with you. If you're thinking in terms of how can I get 6 days? Well, what if you had 4-day drivers? You've all got drivers, who don't want to work 5 or 6 days, and instead of sloughing them off, you come up with a part-time driver program where you've got 2 or 4-day drivers. So you've got 2 trucks here, and for this driver operates it through Thursday, and then another 4-day driver or 2-day drivers operates it for Friday and Saturday, and then that Friday-Saturday driver is also operating a second truck on Monday and Tuesday, while a 4-day driver operates it Wednesday through Saturday. Why isn't that possible? Start thinking outside the box. We need drivers. We need to make conditions, attractive to drivers. Maybe baby boomers who would rather drive a truck part-time than pump hands at Walmart. Okay? If you wanted to do 7 days and you've got 5-day drivers in that floater, you can run these trucks 7 days a week. Now, you can't do that with your whole damn fleet, but you can do it in some cases in portions or pieces, okay? And you've got to take a look at it fresh. I can't afford to take a blind look to one driver, one truck. Sooner or later, it's going to get you, okay? So if you slip seat 10% of your trucks, you'll increase your bottom line at least 2 percentage points. That's just 10% of your fleet. You don't have to do this across the board. You can't do it across the board, okay? And when you do it in the future, it's going to be a strategic sale with the cooperation of your customer and your drivers, a special category of driver even, that participates in a slow seat environment. Anyhow, polling questions, okay? With all the things that are coming down the pike here, I mean, how many have changed things in your operation as a result of hours of service and electronic logs? Please answer these questions. Okay. Third of you have changed both. Okay? Scheduling, driver pay. 2/3 of you haven't changed either. And I would suggest that if you're the boss or you have a boss, you take that idea back and say, how can this be? Everything else is changing in the industry and we're not changing. How we schedule or how we pay drivers, you've got to think outside the box going forward. So, with that in mind, let's move on. Operating system. One way or another, I mean, most carriers out there at this particular point have some form of an operating system or an enterprise system. The biggies in the industry are TMW and McLeod. And there are others, many more options now, especially when they're web-based. And this is a tool that allows you to accept orders and plan their fulfillment and plan the implementation and measure it afterwards and gather all the information that you need to determine whether or not you're a profit. Okay? So the thing is, though, in order for it to be effective, it has to be effectively live and complete at the end of each transaction. That means accepting the order. That means assigning the order. That means fulfilling the order. That means completing the order. If that system's going to work for you, you have to use the system the way it's designed, and you can't use it as a recording device, okay? You have to organize your operations department to accommodate the design of your operating system. And all too often, that's the case. Big guys come in, they sell the operating system to ownership and management, and management says, okay, operating department, here's this new operating system, this whiz-bang thing is going to save us. And when the guys come in to install it, the operating people say, well, we don't do things that way. So then the naive people who are there to install it come back and say, well, okay, we'll try to help you adjust how you use it so you can use it the way you use it. At that point, you've thrown away maybe $250,000 investment as it's supposed to be a management tool, and it's now a recording device, okay? And the fact is, all these systems are designed around some basic principles that are quite logical, and you need to organize your operating department around it. It kind of works like this, and we call it central control, right? Dispatch or central dispatch. But there are groups, or else in a small fleet, maybe only one group. But you've got a planner, who's typically the supervisor, working with customer service, and they accept orders, okay, and working with the drivers. So the order flow is this. Customer service reps are assigned to specific customers. That's what they do. They maintain a relationship with the customer, okay? And that's inquiries, that's accepting orders, that's soliciting orders, and entering that order in the operating system. And then in conjunction with the planner, they are going to determine how we're going to assign that to a truck and to a lane in a way that it's the most productive, will generate the most revenue for the truck and satisfaction for the customer. That's between the planner and customer service. Then we have went too fast there. We have driver managers. And once the load is assigned, they assign the load to the drivers. And they manage the pickup and the delivery and the fulfillment of that load. They are the driver supervisors. We don't call them dispatchers. What you need are supervisory people in that role who will manage and not empathize or sympathize with the drivers. They're managing for compliance. They're managing for customer satisfaction. They should be managing the PM schedule so there's no breakdowns. And they should have the ability to initiate recognition and discipline, okay? So if you're in that environment, let's say you're in a situation where you have remote domicile. Well, okay, so you're going to have terminals, and oftentimes they're small terminals. So that terminal manager may be managing all the terminal functions and also be managing the drivers. This can still be split up. What you have to do, though, is you have to centralize the customer service and the planning. You can't let people who are driver managers, they're not analyticals, they're like foremen, they're supervisors. They're going to manage, they're going to lead and manage the plan. The customer service rep has a skill set that makes customers feel like they're being taken care of, and they like the company, and they like that person. Those are two entirely different skill sets, two different personalities. And the planner doesn't have to be customer friendly or driver friendly. This needs to be an analytical leader who's making sure that everything is in the system live in real time, that we're planning 3, 4, and 5 days ahead, not the next day, not 8 hours, but 3, 4, 5 days ahead, because all the data is in the system and we're capable of looking that far ahead to maximize productivity. So with that, let's look and see if maybe you ask yourself, am I set up that way? And if I am, do I have the right people in the right roles? Okay? So you have to look at their personalities and their behaviors, because it takes a different personality to be a customer service rep than it does a driver manager. Just like you'd have a different personality if you're a salesman versus an accountant. Okay? One person's not going to do both jobs efficiently. And this boils down to such things as personality traits. It's called DISC. The system has been around years and years and years. And when you analyze it, you'll find out D stands for dominance, I stands for influence, steady, S is steady, and this is compliance. And we're all made up of these descriptors as far as our personality goes, except some of us have more of one thing than we have the other. And if you were to look at, and this is a profile of a outside salesperson, who's a deal maker and a deal closer. Driving, ambitious, okay, versus mild and agreeable. Persuasive and warm versus incisive and pessimistic, okay. Mobile and restless, sense of urgency versus being passive and impatient. And from a client standpoint, firm, stubborn, most salespeople don't like to do paperwork and not team players, all out there by themselves. but versus someone who's compliant and needs structure around them. So when you lay these things out on a plot graph, and you realize that people who personalities check out in this plot graph, the ones who are blue and red are results-oriented people. The ones who are green and yellow are relationship-driven. The ones who are red and yellow are basically expressives, and the ones who are analytical and supported and green are analyticals. So when you lay these things out, you find out the typical driver is down here in the supporter group. Accommodating, dislikes confrontation, persistent, controls emotion, adaptable, good listener. Just tell me what to do. Don't lie to me and have something lined up for me afterwards, and I'll do a good job. Okay? Now, the driver manager that's supervising them needs to be up here, confrontational, direct, results-oriented, sense of urgency, a change agent. All too often, we find driver managers or dispatchers who are taken from the driver ranks and of the same personality makeup. Not every driver is that way, but the bulk of them are. You need a leader in that role. And down here, your customer service rep, high trust level, not fearful of change. Rather talk than listen, verbal skills, project self-confidence. And up here, terminal managers and planners. Direct, results-oriented, sense of urgency. These are very important. It doesn't mean you're going to run over anyone. It means that you've got people who have the personality attributes and assessments to be leaders. Okay, and that's what you need, just like in your top management. So this is just completely possible for you to check this thing out. We use a process called attribute assessment provided by a company called GDI, and we use it all the time. And it enables you to put people in roles where they're most apt to be successful. And if they do have the traits that are important, it also tells you the skills that they need in order to be successful in their jobs. So give that serious thought. Let's just look at the impact that incentives can have. They can be huge for operations and for sales and also for your drivers. Okay, they're a real challenge though. Incentives are the most difficult thing to put together. But when you get started out, you can start off with something that is that's logical. Okay, so let's look at some kind of a short-term incentive that we could come up with our operations department. Looking at the operations department as a group, okay, and you establish a revenue per truck per week goal, and where you're at, and you just up that goal by $25 a day per truck. For example, you're going from $3,500 a week to $3,625 a week. Okay, $25 a day. All right, and then every member of the team gets $100 per week when they hit that goal. Don't change their salary. Give them $100 a week when they hit that goal. Leave the goal in place for 3 months, gives them a chance to work up to it, and then change it by another $25. Now let's look at what the effect of that can be. Let's say you got a department of 5 managing 100 trucks, and you have that $125 increase. That's $12,500 in revenue. At 35% gross margin, that's $43.75 to the company, and the bonus for the 5 people was $500. Do the math, people. That's $38.75 increase, $200,000 a year, and you've got some people in the operations department that are very happy because they're taking another $5,000 or $6,000 home each year. It's huge, and they've earned it, and it's a win-win. Now, for drivers, think outside the box also. Incentive, should be the opportunity to achieve rewards contributed by profits. Let's make everyone profit conscious here. So the goal for the driver should be productivity expectations. This expectations. I'm sorry. This is there's nothing new here, but it's new when you explain it to the driver and he's never heard it before, and you explain to him for you to justify the investment in that truck he's driving. He's got to drive it X number of miles a week. Otherwise, it's not going to pay for itself, and he's not going to have a job. So identify that in the form of goals, and we even recommend considering a salary or a base rate. A lot of companies have guarantees right now. Why not make that a salary? Make the person feel like they truly are an employee with responsibility because they're salaried, okay? And you can adjust that salary based on tenure, industry experience, merit, specialized, okay? And then there's a bonus when they reach a goal. They reach a weekly goal and they get a bonus, which equates to 10 or 15% of their salary. Now, on top of that, you're paying mileage on top of that, okay? And when they go over that goal, you hike the mileage rate. At that particular point, it's a win-win because the goal says this truck is delivering a minimal amount of profit to the bottom line based on this driver's productivity, okay? Now, this is all the subject of a different webinar, and we can go into that in detail, but just basically, for example, let's say a short haul driver, you want that position to, local driver, at least $48,000 a year. And let's say the goal is 2,500 miles a week, and the driver hits 2,750 at $1.40 a mile, okay? And the gross margin on that at 35% is an additional $122.50. So the driver has a weekly pay of $850. When he hit that goal, he got 10%, $85, and he went over the goal, he got an additional 50 cents a mile, okay? And that puts him up over $50,000 with a major contribution to the company, okay? Because the additional gross margin that went to the company was another $122.50. So it's a win-win. Think outside the box and consider that. So let's summarize. What are the biggies here, okay? Operating system, live and real time. Organize operations to fit the operating system. Educate ops and sales about profitability. Reduce deadhead. Slip seat, 10% of your trucks. Compensatory fuel surcharge, the big, real biggie. And productivity incentives for operations and drivers. So this is all the net impact here we're talking about is between 2 and 10% of net, between 2% net profit and a 10% net profit. So what we're going to do here in order to demonstrate this, okay, we're going to pull up a little deal we have here that we call mock-up trucking. Just bear with me while I get this in place. This is a model we built, and at the top, this is a P&L structure, and at the top are operating stats that drive this model, okay, whether truck count, miles per day, revenue per mile, deadhead, things like that. So we have revenue, and then we have it broken down by cost centers, okay? Here's the company over-the-road trucks, company short haul, company multi-shift, contractors over here, and even brokerage, okay? Then the second part are the variable expenses, and they're driven by cost per mile, so miles drive the category in each area, okay? And then we get down to a gross margin, and we come down to fixed expenses by department. And this is how your P&L should be organized, so it's a management tool. And there's your sales expense, and there's your operations expense, and there's your cost of ownership of the equipment expense, and there's your admin expense. And it comes down. Okay, now this is very busy. But the fact is, this is a company, that's doing $1.7 million a month, and it was theoretically shows that they're making an $18,000 profit. When you dig into it, it's really a $16,000 operating profit loss, and the profit is being shown by gain on sale of assets or other revenues. You have to separate all that. Activity-based costing 101. Now, this is too busy for us to deal with, so I have this whole thing summarized on a summary that looks like this, okay? And so these are the results, and I can play with this chart, and I can change all of the figures on that P&L, and it will give us the results as we improve things like productivity. So what we're going to look at first, okay, is we're going to look at fuel surcharge. Again, that's not meant to be the current fuel surcharge rate. It's less than that. But let's say that this was the fuel surcharge that was being received, and we determined that it was supposed to be 22% according to all the indexes, and we only got 20%. So let's say, okay, we start doing our job and we start selling that, and all of a sudden it's at 22%. Now watch the bottom line. I just had a $30,000 swing to the bottom line across the board. And if that were 3 or 4%, can you imagine what the impact was? Well, let's just say it's just 2%, okay? Now let's look at deadhead ratio. And as we analyze this, right here, we come to realize that, okay, the company trucks are different than the contractor trucks doing the same job. I wonder why. Could it be that the people in my operations department don't fully understand the impact of contractors, and the contractors who are revenue conscious manipulate the situation and get the best miles and the lowest deadhead and the best rate from? Could that possibly be? Have you ever seen that in the operations department? Duh, happens all the time. Okay, so let's say we're going to be good managers, and we're going to treat both the same, because I don't care who owns the truck. If it doesn't get adequate revenue per day, it will go away. Okay, so we have an inequity here. We're going to say, okay, company gets 15%. We're going to theoretically neutralize this. Instead of 15 or 14, they're both going to get 14% from a deadhead standpoint. Okay, all right. Now that means also that I have to equalize their revenue per mile. So they're now, instead of $1.65 and $1.69, they're both going to get $1.67. Boom. I just had another $15,000 swing to the $16,000 swing to the bottom line just by making those adjustments, treating the two trucks. And the reason for that is you get a higher gross margin on the company trucks and a greater contribution, and also now my company trucks are showing a profit instead of a loss like they did before. Okay, so man, that's huge. Okay, and at least I'm starting to make some money. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at by the way, here are my driver earnings down here, and they're not too good. They're not making up as much money as we want them to make. So what we're going to start looking at now is, okay, what can we do, from a productivity standpoint, okay? And since we organize our department into central control, we're going to say, okay, we're going to get the same mileage out of the trucks. We're going to get, we're going to hike this up, say that 25 miles per day. So we're going to get 475, and we're going to do the same thing with the owner-operator since we're treating them the same. And there's nothing out of reach about 475. Absolutely nothing at all. Okay. I mean, are those numbers too low? Okay. Let's say in an over-the-road environment, it is possible easily to get 2,500 miles a week. So I'm going to put that up to 500 in both cases. Now I'm up a 3% profit. Look at the swing I had on the bottom line here. I swung so far over $70,000. Okay, and now what I'm going to look at is, let's increase the productivity of the short haul trucks. And can they get 2250 a week in a 450 mile range? I think so. So let's put those up to 450 a day. And now this is a multi-shift, so I've got some slip-seated trucks, not very many, but I've got slip-seated trucks, and they're only getting 700. And if I were to manage those, so I was at least getting 400 miles per shift, okay, I could get 800. So now all of a sudden I'm up making at least 5% net before tax profit. Okay, so this is not brain science. Okay, and if I really start looking at this thing and I start slip seating those trucks, and instead of having 8% of my fleet down, and I get here to a point where I've got extra drivers and floaters, and I'm now up to, instead of 92% occupied, I'm up to, let's say, 99 across the board. My contractors are always 100% because they only count the trucks that are in service. But I'm making 6%, and I really haven't done anything that's unachievable. God forbid, let's say that I increase the number of slip seat trucks, and I become more and more efficient, and I were to get like 850 a day, and boom, I jump another percentage point. So all of these things are possible. It's possible to make a profit, and these are not productivity expectations that are out of the normal at all, none whatsoever, absolutely not. So it's possible. It'll have a major impact on your bottom line, and that's kind of our story. So I'm going to go back to the where we were, and I got the wrong one. Please excuse that. Here we are. So where we're at right now is this is like Q&A time, okay? Lisa, do we have anyone who's raised their hands?
We have not.
Oh, just we can't be that good, okay? If any of you have any questions right now, now's the time. Please raise them. We'd be glad to answer them. There are no bad questions. You're completely anonymous. No one's going to know. Okay. If that's any at all?
Nope. No, I'm just saying I'm waiting. I haven't.
All right. Well, here's what we're going to do. Those of you that want to stick around, we're going to have a 10-minute quick demo on true costing. Those of you that can't, I want to thank you for attending. Okay, we have invite you to come to our website, and this presentation will be posted through our website, probably on the web, okay, through YouTube. So if you have employees you want to see this, you can do that. We will be in touch with you, and myself or David Ugers in the near future to see your reaction to this website. And also, you're going to get a poll after this. We would like to shame you into responding to the poll. After all, this has been a free presentation. I hope and feel that you walked away with some good ideas. And if you feel that's the case, do us a favor and tell us how you think we do. So with that, at this point, I'm going to say, okay, we're going to switch this over to a different program so that we can give you a quick demo on true costing. And I need a second to change that over, so just bear with me. Okay, so this has to do with true costing, okay? And we'll get past any of the introductions and all that kind of good stuff. This part definitely is a commercial, and it's some quick slides to show you how we're able to take the costing data and make sense out of it. True costing is an activity-based system, and basically we call it a cost modeling system. And it's a pricing tool, it's an analysis tool, and a management information tool. And it gives you the ability to drill down to a single truck. And when you do that, you put that truck in a trip or with a customer or in different combinations of equipment, different lanes, different divisions, and varying degrees of productivity. And we can measure the profitability of each of those, okay? This is not a software that requires an interface. We build a model that's representative of how your company is organized and how it operates. We then pull into that model your trial balance. We may expand the trial balance so that it has the numbers that we need to match up to operating stats in the system, and then we pull extract files from the operating system into that model. And we also have the ability to pull from different sources. If you, for example, if your mileage system is not embedded, we can pull any mileage database in. If you'd have onboard computers that are not integrated with your operating system, we can go into something like PeopleNet or Qualcomm and pull their database in and geofence the trips and the trucks and everything else, using that as an outside source and marrying it with that model. Or we can go out to informational models too, where there's data that you need that maybe someone else would need. It's very, very flexible and not time intensive in its setup, because again, there's no interface, and we're building a model, and the client is simply supplying data to us in the process. And then once it's operating, it's just updating that data. So, unique features, vital signs. It gives you KPIs that you can measure every segment of your business. The ability to drill down to a single truck. Fuel surcharge is a compensatory. Different equipment combinations. Pricing, okay, from average. When you pricing model typically gives you an average price based on averages. This can be adjusted to fit actuals of a given situation. And measure the profit effect of increased productivity, okay? So it's determined on this basis, just like that activity-based costing model was. Distance and time, variable cost measured by the mile, fixed has a burden rate per operating truck per day, okay? Revenue per truck per day, and number of trucks operating, all right? And so looking at, again, that same kind of trip that we have up here, we've got a trip. We know the miles, we know the revenue. The question is, what is the impact of time? So if we've got a trip that takes 48 hours, and we've got revenue, we've got variable expense, fixed expense based on time, $168 a day or so much per hour. Total cost, a modest loss. However, if that trip were done in 44 hours, there would be less time, fixed cost, and a profit. And if it were done in 52 hours, there would be a greater loss. Again, the only thing that's changing here is the amount of time involved, okay? So when you take that into the a pricing model, we've got that same trip. The fact is, we want to get a 92% operating ratio or an 8% profit. In this particular case, if we're doing this trip with drop traders and we're getting a 2.6% profit, and we plug into this, and the outbound leg is the one in question, what do we need to get it 8%? Plug in the operating ratio, it's going to come back and it's going to tell us that that trip needed to generate $1,276, and as a result of that, the outbound leg should have been $796 to generate a $102 profit. So it evolves into a pricing tool. When you look at it, from a financial standpoint, this is what your trial balance would look like. And under each of these categories over here, you click on that, and all of the revenue company accounts would be there. All the revenue for lease operators would be there. Your variable expenses, your semi and fixed expenses, however you wish to organize them. You click on it, you have the entire detail, and then you have various terminals, okay? So the terminals are looked upon as cost centers. Those terminals, those could be different types of trucks if you're a single domicile, or a terminal could have different kind of trucks, like owner-operator, contractor, or local and over the road. So in all these cases, everything ties to the trial balance, okay? And if you want details on Terminal 2, you would click on that, and it's going to take you down to Terminal 2 with the same P&L data. But then it's going to start to organize your revenue and your expenses into factors that you can measure and organize. And it tells you you've got a variable cost of 97 cents a mile and a burden rate, in this case, of $200.52 based on 42 trucks operating. So if you now take that a step further and you start developing KPIs and you have standards that you're measuring against, either past performance or goals, this can be broken down by any category that you want. We can get down the low level, line haul revenue, fuel surcharge, what is the fuel surcharge average, line haul revenue per load, total profit. All of these things can be boiled down into KPIs, and if you hit them, you'll get an arrow that is going up, and if you're off, you'll get an arrow indicator going down, okay? And then you can drill down. So let's say, I want to drill down to the operational level and look at these. And I've got indicators here that that need to go up or down. Tell you based on how your performance is. So at the terminal level, I can have an overall KPI for the terminal with the ability, to take any one terminal and any one period of time and drill down and see why in May of 2012 that terminal did not do well. So I click on that, and it starts giving me the data behind that. Some of that data is our trips, and this is your operational report that tells you how am I doing with all these customers. And there's the customers for this terminal, and they're all arranged, and the number of loads, and then all of these factors above are indicators that you need to get boiled down to. There's actually a total profit, and these are the key indicators that you want to be looking at: margin percent, gross margin, line haul revenue, whatever they need to be to fit your operation, okay? So here again, I want to drill down, and because what I want to look is at a customer, and I want to look at the detail behind all of these loads. So I click on that, and I start to get origin and destination data, and the destination data goes, from origin to state, from state to city, and drills down to the load level as to where the truck is actually going in that specific city. So here again, if I click on any of these categories up above, I'm going to get information in an ascending or descending value, so I can look at the very best and the very worst. And these indicators can all be what they need to be, and even though they're abbreviated, in real life, if you were to hold the arrow over the indicator, it gives you a definition of what it is. So if I'm going again here, I've got, in this case, I'm able to measure my fuel surcharge variance. And we've got a unique method for that. When you buy fuel, we put it into inventory, and we expense the fuel based on your consumption rate and the price you pay for the fuel. So it's quite accurate. We do the same thing. We geofence all of your stops. We can measure load time. We can measure drive time, dwell time, anything that you want to fit into it, because that information is all in the operating system. And if the operating system is live in real time, all that data is at your fingertips, and you can determine where you are, okay, very easily. Now here we are. We're down to the load level. There's 4 loads, and they're all going in the same direction. They're going from Chester to Easton, okay? However, one of those loads, the profit's way off. So you do analysis, you find out, well, it wasn't revenue. What happened was we had dispatched a truck, a post-load deadhead, that was different than what was planned, and it drove down the profit, okay? So you have the ability to do analysis. In fact, you have the ability to extract data from the operating and the accounting system, to generate cost allocators, to analyze that data, okay, and define the profitability all the way down to a single truck, a customer, or a load. What it effectively gives you is a modeling system for your price. Let's assume that you get a rate request. You then have a pricing model to go to. You can take the price and adjust it according to actual conditions. You then can publish that rate, you can run with it, and then you can review the assumptions and adjust it. And the reason you can review the assumptions is because back here, when we're doing the assumptions, we can actually change any variable expense that we want to fit the conditions, or we can change any fixed expense that we want to fit the conditions. So we wind up with a price that's based on conditions and not based off average off from the KPIs. So pricing becomes a pretty routine thing at that particular point. What you wind up doing is you wind up defining a trip by zipper by city. You define effectively what level of profit you want to make and how you want that package defined, pricing. You review the miles. The trip is laid out for you. And it's going to come back and then give you a summary of your pricing of your cost and your fuel surcharge separately with the ability to roll them together if you wish, and also to determine whether or not you want the pickup deadhead in and the post-load deadhead, how you want to control that. In addition to that, you have a save button that gives you the ability to save all this data. It's how you put that price together, so you can then go back and you can measure it the way it was planned, okay, and not necessarily the way the operating system is reporting to it. So this is a system we've been marketing. Our companies who are now using it, and there are many more companies who used our Excel version over the past 25 years. So it's a tested system, and we simply have brought this thing to the market. And if there's interest on your part, we're interested in showing this to you. You can contact us, or we'll be in touch with you. We're Trincon, okay? We're in Columbus, Ohio. And basically, with that in mind, again, I would like to say, thank you for coming to us. This is what we do, and I hope we've been successful. And please do. I guess I'll ask one more thing, one more time. Lisa, any questions?
No more questions, sir.
Okay. Well, with that in mind, people, thank you very much for attending. It's time to go have lunch. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.